ice cubes. So I talked about it's the little things. This man makes ice. And I was working with a client yesterday, and I was like, so do you understand that personalities are different? And the reality is husbands who tend to be more, I'm going to leave him in here because we all embarrassed while I talk about him. Husbands who tend to be steady and behind the scenes, and usually words aren't their first love language, which is mine. And let me pause there. So Gary Chapman came up with a book called The 5 Love Languages. And there's 5 love languages, and they are acts of service, quality time, gifts, which are really tokens of affection, not like presents, words of affirmation, and physical touch. And a little bit about each one. So acts of service is really simple. It is where you love to your love language is when people do things for you and they take care of you, and that is part of acts of service. They step up to the plate. Quality time, pretty much self-explanatory. Quality time is basically you just want to spend time with people where they are 100% present. And you want it to be long, and you want it to be involved and engaged. Quality time. Gifts. So a lot of people think that means presents, and it's really not. Aren't you glad that's not one of mine?
I am.
It is tokens of affection. So it could be that you saw, walking down the road, you thought of your honey, and you picked up some flowers, or flowers by the side of the road. It could be that you wrote a note on the mirror. It could be that you stopped and got her favorite coffee. Any little token that's a physical token that says, I really thought about you, and this is for you. So that's that. Words of affirmation, those are encouraging, affirming words. And physical touch, now this is the one I always try to delineate, because every guy I know says, oh, physical touch, because they associate that with sex. Now, sex is great, and physical touch is about somebody who's touchy-feely. So they are the ones who take your hand, they are the ones who hug, they are the ones who, I always joke with John and say, but if he's within 3 feet of me, he should be touching me, which he's not. See, physical touch is not necessarily his love language, but it is mine. And so what I talk about in my book, Listen, Learn, Love, is that we tend to show love in our love language. For example, John gets all kinds of words from me about how amazing he is and how much I love him and how handsome he is, and because my love language is words of affirmation. I get acts of service. His main love language is acts of service. So I get ice. Now, back to the beginning of my story. In a tiny house, travel trailer, you have a tiny little fridge. And in 34 years of marriage, I don't think I've ever had a fridge, maybe in the very beginning of our marriage.
I don't think so.
I don't think I've ever had a fridge that didn't have an ice maker in it. So I've been spoiled, and a good, 10 years in, we had the kind that you actually just went to the door and put the cup up and, press the button and out came magic ice. And you never had to worry about if there was ice or cold water. Well, in this little tiny house travel trailer, that's kind of what we call it, because on the outside it's a trailer and on the inside it looks like a tiny house. Totally on ADD. Wait for it. He's laughing at me. So in this tiny house, we have these tiny little ice cubes. Can you hold this, honey, so I can use my hands to talk? these tiny little ice cube trays. They're like this big. Hold it up. And they're square. And they make these great square ice cubes that are in my drink right here. But you have to make them. And literally, they're tiny ice cube trays. So in one drink, I can use whether it's water, iced tea, a cocktail in the evening, I can use like half the tray. So I, use up a lot of ice. And the other day, yeah, you can take it. That's great. Thank you. Live and in person. This is the real deal, folks. So the other day, I went in and I was like, I don't think I did any ice. And there were little Ziploc bags of ice in this one part of the freezer that I think holds cans or juices or something. And I had this aha moment. My husband makes ice. He may not say he loves me all the time. He may not even, do the physical touch rule. But he has incredible acts of service. And so, I don't worry about there being ice in my, in my freezer in my tiny house so I can have a cold drink. I don't worry about, fuses and batteries and lights and, what are those little things on the back? Oh, like car tags, the stickers that say you registered. So all these little things that are huge things in the scheme of things, I have the, blessing of him taking care of that. So why this long story? Because I was talking with one of my clients the other day, and she was lamenting about her husband, who he was not lovey-dovey. He wasn't, hers are the same love language as mine, words of affirmation and So he wasn't being real affirming and encouraging, and she was really, kind of frustrated and fretting. And as women, we tend to compare, and then we think, well, her husband does that, and my husband doesn't do that, and we forget the little things that our husband does. And so I told her the story about John making ice, like my husband makes ice, and that is a way he shows me love. That is a way that he cares for me. And one of the things that I was saying to her, so what are the ways that your husband, cares for you? And of course, he's very similar, acts of service, pays the bills, takes the dog out, takes care of the little things in the house that she doesn't have to worry about. I mean, I really have not worried about a smoke detector battery going bad. I mean, that's a big deal in a house. And those are the little acts of service that make such a difference. Or bringing me coffee in the morning. Sweet, sweet things that if we forget that those are love, tokens of love, those are expressions of love, and only look for what we think we should be getting, we miss it. Now, here's the last point I want to make, and that's kind of the trick. The key to maturity is, it would really be for me to make ice to show him love in his love language, and him to be all wordy with me. And so as we've gotten married, and the longer we've been married, the more we work on that. I try to do things for him because I know that that's his love language. We tend to show love in our love language. And usually we marry somebody who does not have the same love language we do, and we forget that we should share it in their love language. So if you want to learn more about love languages, pop over to susiemiller.com. You can follow us on Empty Nesters on the Road. If you know your love language and your spouse's love language, pop them in the comments below, because it's really fun to see who matches up with who. One of the jokes I told my kids all the time is, gifts is not a big one for me. So they got lots of love and encouragement verbally when they were in college, but I don't think I sent them very many care packages. So I'm really grateful that was none of their first number one love languages. So think about that. Think about what your spouse is. Pop it in the comments below. If you have a funny story, share it. I'd love to hear, because, it's a pretty big deal that my husband makes ice. So my challenge to you is to look at your spouse in the place that you might be the most frustrated with him or her, and look for the way they are showing you love. Even if you wish it was different, find the ice cubes in your marriage. Have a great day. This is day 20 from the nest, and we'll see you tomorrow.